How you doing, guys? Welcome back. It's LSP. Today I'm going to be discussing the S&P and the Nasdaq. If you're not already in my Discord, the link's in the description below. One of the members in there asked me to talk about the Nasdaq, the S&P. You can see, and I'm just going to get straight into the analysis, but you can see we've had pretty decent run up. If we just zoom all the way out, this is a very, very strong move up, but you can see the kind of parabolic nature of the way that the S&P has been moving. And obviously when it peaked all-time high, it was a pretty aggressive drop. This was expected, obviously. I spoke about this a while back, and then obviously we've had a pretty decent run, and now we're getting a little bit of a response. Now, there's a couple of things I want to bring your attention to. The first is this. So you can see that when price hit all-time high and then it started to kind of recede back, or pull back. This right here, okay? All right, and let me get rid of this one for now. So you can see price started to drop. It drops, comes back up, okay, and it hits this LP, right? And then it moves away from that aggressively. Now that is a pretty big move away from this level. So we know this is pretty significant. Now you can say, well, price came up, it's hit this level and it's responding away from that level, and that's what it's hitting, right? But there's also a secondary level here, which was the one that was on the chart before, okay, which I was talking about again previously, and you can see that that's almost been absorbed completely, and obviously we're getting a pretty decent run now. This month is pretty aggressive. September is generally pretty weak anyway, and in almost all cases, if you look back throughout history, September's always generally been a bearish month. But if we just drop down to the weekly, you can kind of keep breaking things down and breaking things down. There's fractal natures of everything. So if few prices come up, there's another level just here that price has responded to, and then it's dropping. And because we've effectively taken out these lows, I'm expecting a couple of things. So first of all, I just want to quickly get the gaps out of the way. Like, people look at gaps and they just automatically assume, that price is going to fill these gaps, and that may be the case eventually. You'll probably be right, but I don't look at gaps that way. It's more about, sort of the imbalances that are on the chart, but you need the context to run up into that point to say, okay, I understand why price is probably going to keep running lower to come down to this level down here, for example. Now, you guys know, for those that have been following me for a while, I've been calling, much lower prices on the S&P for quite some time, and the kind of rhetoric that this is going to happen at some point, kind of runs a little bit stale, because people get fed up of, well, there's all of this bearish tone, there's all of this inflation, there's all of this, interest rates and so on and so on and so on. But then ultimately end up in a situation where we don't really see what we're supposed to be seeing. Personally, my stance on the bearish nature of the entire global system, stands. And I think once we start to see these defaults really hit the market and people really start to struggle, things will collapse, and a new system will be ushered in, and we'll all be given handouts, right? If you really break things down and you really look at the way the system is, it's being designed, to have one world sort of currency, one world system, and unfortunately, it's just one of those things that people are like, no, it's nonsense. It isn't nonsense. It is going to happen at some point. It's inevitable. Even if you don't believe what you're reading and seeing, it is inevitable. So going back to the S&P, in terms of levels and what we're expecting, I would. Let me just drop down to the daily for a second. So you can see this is a breakaway gap. This looks like a breakaway gap to me. Probably going to end up somewhere down here, to be honest. So 42.40 to 42 is probably the level where we're going to end up. Would make the most sense to me. So at least another sort of 100, 130, between 100 and 130 points or so. Even if it starts to regress, even if it starts to find a little bit of sensitivity here and release, starts to rally a little bit, it's going to come straight into this gap here. But I do believe this is a breakaway gap on the daily, and the weekly does confirm this as well. It's Friday today, so probably going into next week, I would expect almost no sensitivity there whatsoever. Let me just take a look, and obviously this can change, but if the market gaps up, I would assume a fade. I'm not, and just to be really clear, I don't trade the S&P at all, but I would imagine if the market gaps up, at New York Open, then I would, if I was going to be trading this, I'd be looking to fade this, to be honest. I wouldn't be looking to go long, down at these levels. But that's just, kind of a side thought from me. But it does look like a breakaway gap. It does look like it's going to continue. And I would loosely expect 42.43 to around about 42.21 and possibly as low as 4200. If we go over to the Nasdaq, Again, not as, and what's interesting, let me just show you something so you can see, and the best way to just show you is to just do this. So you can see prices come down on the Dow, okay, and it didn't hit this level, right? Higher low. S&P straight through it, right? So the S&P is the front runner at the minute. You can see this, and showing a lot more weakness. If we go on the Nasdaq as well, we can see the same thing again, right? So it's looking like the S&P is the weakest of the three. There is an argument to be made of some people when they're using this technique. They'll say, okay, well, the S&P is overshot, you know, and the Dow and the Nasdaq are showing the true nature of what's happening, and we're probably going to get a bounce from here. I don't believe that to be the case at all. I do think that, you know, the S&P is going to be the front runner, you know, and everything's basically just going to follow, you know, what the S&P is doing. It does look like tech's a little bit stronger, but to be honest, that's expected with all of this AI stuff and whatnot. But again, if we make a note here on the daily, so it will be this level there. So if we look at this, we've already tapped this once. Nice response away from that, and we've come all the way back, pretty much almost negated the full move. And again, I do believe this is a breakaway gap. Might see some continuation today around about 14,500 or so. Run a little bit deeper into this LP, absorb some of that, you know, some of that liquidity down there. It is Friday, you know, so obviously if you're just looking at this on an intraday basis, you know, there's not really much going to change, unless we see something absolutely insane. But in terms of overall movement, larger picture, probably over the next, you know, 2 to 3 weeks, possibly a month, I would expect prices to continue going lower into the remainder of September, and then potentially find some stability down here, and then we'll have to kind of reassess again. So I hope this helps, and this is for Serge, obviously, because he requested this. I hope everyone's having an awesome day, and I look forward to speaking to you guys very, very soon. All the best. Take care. Ciao for now.